Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The first thing that felt wrong was the ventilator. Not the sound. Those machines always have a sound. A steady little bellows rhythm, like a metronome you can't unhear once it's in your head. It was the timing. The inhale landed a fraction late, like someone clapping off beat, and then corrected itself. Late, corrected, late again. And each time it stuttered, the plastic tubing twitched against the bed rail with a dry, impatient tap. I stood there with my hand halfway to the call button, listening, trying not to look like I'd never been alone with a patient who couldn't tell me what they felt. The room was dim on purpose, only the hallway light leaking in under the door, and a small lamp on the dresser aimed away from the bed. Everything had that soft amber tone that makes you feel like you're inside a photograph. The ventilator screen glowed green, numbers, waveforms, an alarm icon that wasn't lit. "Come on," I whispered, like the machine was a stubborn dog. I checked the tubing connections anyway. Tugged, pressed, followed the line with my eyes all the way to the track site. The humidifier bottle had condensation on the inside like a cold drink. The monitor beside it showed a clean oxygen saturation in the high 90s. Heart rate steady, if a little slow. Nothing was wrong in the way a checklist recognizes wrong. And still, the timing bothered me. I looked at my phone. 11:48 p.m. The screen brightness lit my hand an unhealthy blue. I turned it down and slipped it back into my scrub pocket. Even though I wasn't wearing actual scrubs, just dark joggers and a plain long-sleeve shirt I'd bought specifically because it didn't rustle when I moved. This was not a hospital. This was a fourth-floor condo in a newer building on the edge of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where the lobby smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and money, and the elevator didn't have buttons that stuck. Even the air up here felt curated, filtered, quiet, expensive. I walked around the bed and checked the other side because it gave me something to do with my hands. The bed was a proper hospital bed, rented, with rails and a trapeze bar above it that was pointless for someone who couldn't use it. A suction canister sat on a rolling stand. A stack of disposable blue pads was tucked into a drawer that hadn't quite closed all the way. On the dresser, a plastic medication organizer labeled with days of the week. A stainless steel tumbler with a straw. A remote control sealed in a clear plastic bag, like someone thought germs were the main enemy here. The patient lay on their back, head turned slightly toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but not tight, and the city's glow slipped in anyway. Their chest rose and fell with the ventilator's assistance, the rise just a touch too perfect, too measured. They weren't old, maybe early 30s, skin pale under the amber light, dark lashes resting against their cheeks like they'd fallen asleep mid-movie. I'd been told not to think of it like sleep. I had been told a lot of things in the last 12 hours. A soft knock came from the open doorway behind me. I turned too fast, my shoulder catching the IV pole and making the bag swing. The pole squeaked in protest. "Sorry," a woman whispered, stepping into the room like she didn't want her feet to make noise. She wore leggings and a Georgetown hoodie and had the kind of posture that comes from holding yourself together by force. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked like it hurt. She smelled faintly like coffee that had been reheated and forgotten. Mara Bennett, 45, female, moved straight to the ventilator screen without looking at the patient's face. She stared at the numbers, then at the tubing, then at my hands, as if checking whether I'd touched something I shouldn't. "You hearing it too?" I asked. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "The rhythm? Yes, it does that sometimes," she said. She reached out and pressed a button on the machine, not turning anything off, just scrolling. The screen changed, waveforms moving. "It compensates. It's fine." The way she said fine made it sound like a word she'd said 100 times to herself in the bathroom mirror. I nodded like I accepted that. I wanted to. I wanted the world to stay inside the little boundaries I understood. Machine makes noise, you check connections, you move on. But my attention kept sliding back to the patient's mouth, taped slightly open, the skin around the track's site faintly irritated. Mara's eyes followed mine and then snapped away. "You're Eli?" she asked, too brightly, like we were meeting at a barbecue, and not hovering over a person who couldn't wake up. "Yeah, Eli Mercer." I kept my voice low. "The agency said you wanted someone overnight so you could sleep." "I do," she said. Then she corrected herself. "I want to try. I can't." Her jaw tightened. "I can't do the nights anymore, not alone." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a sob. It was the flat admission of someone who'd hit a limit and was quietly furious about it. I adjusted the IV pole back into place, more carefully this time. "Okay, I'm here." Mara watched me for a beat, then moved toward the dresser and opened a folder that had been sitting there, thick with paperwork in plastic sleeves. She didn't offer it to me yet. "You've done home care before," she said, not quite a question. "Yes," I said, "mostly post-op stuff. Stroke patients, hospice, a couple times." I didn't add that those were always in houses that smelled like laundry detergent and soup, not like this condo with its quiet hum of HVAC and its polished floors. Mara nodded, like she was pulling facts from a list she'd memorized so she wouldn't have to think too hard. "There's a schedule," she said, "a routine." And she stopped, swallowed, and tried again. "And rules. Okay." Her gaze flicked to the patient again, and for the first time I saw it, how she kept her eyes on the machines, the tubing, the medication, anything but the face. It wasn't denial exactly. It was self-preservation. "What's their name?" I asked, because I realized I didn't actually know if I was allowed to say it aloud. Mara's mouth tightened. "Noah." She said it like a password. I repeated it softly. "Noah." The ventilator sighed again, that offbeat hitch. Tap, tap, tubing against rail. Mara noticed my eyes go to it, and she lifted a hand, palm out, a small stop sign. "Please don't touch anything unless you have to." "I won't," I said quickly. "I'm just listening." "Good," she said, and the word came out sharper than she probably meant. She exhaled and pressed her lips together, then softened. "I'm sorry. I've had people." She glanced at the folder, as if the folder contained the ghosts of previous caregivers. "I can't do surprises right now." I understood that more than I wanted to. I'd taken this job for the money, yes. The agency had said private client, overnight monitoring, high pay. And I tried not to let my brain race ahead with what that might mean. Rent was due. My student loan auto pay was about to bounce. I told myself it was just another shift. But underneath, that was the other reason, the one I didn't say out loud. I needed something that would keep me awake. For the last 2 months, sleep had become a place my mind used against me. Not nightmares, exactly. More like a loop. I'd wake up convinced I'd forgotten something important, something that would ruin me. And I'd check my phone, my bank account, my locked door, my stove knobs, my calendar, over and over until dawn. The fear wasn't loud, it was methodical. It wore me down. An overnight job sounded like structure, a reason to be awake, a justification. Mara pulled a chair up beside the bed, sat, then immediately stood again, as if sitting felt wrong. She picked up the folder and finally handed it to me. Inside were typed pages, medication times, feeding tube instructions, ventilator settings, emergency contacts. Everything was cleanly organized and highlighted in different colors. Someone had worked hard to make chaos look manageable. At the top, in bold, "Do not stimulate patient." Under that, another line, "No family visits overnight. No visitors." I looked up at Mara. "Stimulation like loud noise, lights. Talking to him," she said. "Touching him. Moving him more than you have to for care." She said him and then flinched, like she hated the pronoun. The doctors were clear. "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. Mara's eyes hardened, but not at me, at the question, at the universe that allowed it. "Because he isn't supposed to wake up," she said, and the sentence landed heavy in the room, heavier than the machines, heavier than the city glow. Then she added quickly, as if patching a crack, "Not yet. It would be bad." Bad how? She didn't say. The folder didn't say. The folder said what to do if the feeding pump alarmed, and what number to call if the oxygen saturation dropped, and how to suction if needed. It had no section for what to do if not supposed to wake up became woke up anyway. I flipped a page and saw a sticky note attached near the back, handwritten in sharp, cramped letters. "If anything changes, call me first." Not the agency, me. I looked at her. "Even if it's an emergency," Mara's throat bobbed. "If it's an emergency, you call 911. Obviously." She said obviously like she was trying to anchor herself to something normal. "But if it's something else, you call me something else. A change that wasn't a code blue emergency, but wasn't routine either. A category wide enough to hide anything." From the hall, a second voice drifted in, male, older, tired. "Mara, are we doing this or not?" A man stepped into view, leaning against the doorframe like he'd been standing there for a while, listening. He wore slacks and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the kind of outfit someone puts on when they can't afford to look undone. There was a faint red mark on his nose bridge, like he'd taken his glasses off recently and rubbed too hard. Dr. Peter Lang, 58, male, didn't smile. He looked at the ventilator first, then at Noah, then at me. "This is the overnight caregiver?" he asked. "Yes," Mara said. "Eli." Dr. Lang's eyes narrowed slightly, not unkindly, more like a clinician assessing a new variable. "You have experience with vents." "Some," I said. "I'm not a respiratory therapist, but I can monitor, suction if needed, call if that's fine," he said, cutting me off. "You're not here to adjust settings. You're here to observe and intervene only if there's a clear medical issue." Mara's shoulders lifted a fraction, then settled. Relief and tension in the same motion. Dr. Lang stepped into the room far enough that the hallway light sharpened the edges of his face. "Eli, listen carefully." He spoke quietly, but there was a firmness to it that made my spine straighten. "Overnight, the goal is stability. No stimulation. No attempts at interaction. If you think you see something, you document it. If there's an emergency, you call emergency services. Otherwise, you call Mara. I glanced down at the folder again, then back at Noah. Their eyelids didn't move. Their fingers lay relaxed on the sheet, nails clean, skin slightly dry. The ventilator's rhythm hitched once more. Tap. Dr. Lang followed my gaze. The machine compensates. It's within parameters. It just sounds off, I said. It's a sound you'll get used to, he replied. Then he looked at Mara. We need to decide. Decide what? I asked, before my brain could label it as none of my business. Mara's eyes met mine, and something in her expression shifted: hesitation, calculation, fear. Dr. Lang's jaw tightened, the muscles working like he was chewing on a word he didn't want to say. Mara glanced at the folder in my hands, then at the door, then back to Noah. There's something, she said, and her voice dropped even lower, that we haven't told you yet. Dr. Lang's gaze sharpened. Mara, I'm not doing another night of half-truths, she snapped, the first real heat I'd heard from her. Then to me softer, but it's late, and if we tell you now, you might walk. My stomach did a small, slow turn, not panic, just that instinctive tightening when you realize you've stepped onto a surface that might not hold your weight. Dr. Lang exhaled through his nose. We can discuss it in the kitchen, he said, as if changing rooms could change the reality of it. Mara didn't move. She watched my face, waiting, and I realized the choice was already in the air, sitting between the hum of the ventilator and the muted city outside the window. Do I ask now, before I'm alone in the dark, with a patient who isn't supposed to wake up, or do I nod, take the folder, and let the night explain it to me? I tightened my grip on the paperwork until the plastic sleeve creaked. Tell me, I said, my voice barely above the ventilator's next imperfect inhale. Mara's lips parted. Dr. Lang looked away, and the ventilator, like it had an opinion, hitched again late, corrected while Noah lay still, unaware of the conversation rearranging the room around them. The power blinked out at 1:12 a.m., not a dramatic blackout, just a soft, collective inhale of silence, like the building had closed its eyes for a second too long. The lamp on the dresser went dark. The hallway light under the door vanished. The city glow outside the curtains dimmed to a dull smear. And then the machines reacted. The ventilator let out a sharp, electronic chirp and switched tones lower, more insistent. The heart monitor stuttered, then steadied, now running on battery. The feeding pump alarmed once, a flat beep that cut through the room and then stopped. I stood frozen for half a second, my brain scrambling to sort what mattered first. Battery-backed devices were doing their jobs. That was good. Building-wide outages happened. This was Georgetown, not a war zone. I forced myself to breathe through my nose and count. 1, 2. I crossed the room and checked the ventilator screen. Battery indicator, 93%. Plenty of time, assuming the outage didn't drag on. The waveform still rolled, still green. The rhythm, though late, corrected. Late felt more obvious in the sudden quiet. Okay, I murmured, not to Noah, but to myself. Okay, I pulled my phone out. No signal issue. No emergency alerts yet. I opened the building's resident app, nothing posted. I hesitated, thumb hovering, then called Mara. It rang once, twice. She picked up on the third ring, breathless. What happened? Power outage, I said. Machines are on battery. Everything looks stable. A pause. I could hear movement on her end, footsteps maybe. How long? Just now. 1 minute maybe. Okay, she said then, quickly. Don't touch anything. The ventilator battery should last hours. The building has a generator for common areas, not individual units. I know, I said. I'm just monitoring. Another pause, longer this time. She stopped, restarted. Is he the same? I looked at Noah. Chest rising and falling, the tape at his mouth unmoved. His fingers were still loose on the sheet. Yes, I said, same. Good, she exhaled, a long, shaky sound she probably didn't realize I could hear. I'm coming back. What, you said? I know what I said, she snapped, then softened immediately. I'll be there in 20 minutes, maybe less. Mara, you don't have to. I do, she said. Just keep him stable. Call me if anything changes. She hung up before I could argue. I stared at the phone for a second, then slid it back into my pocket and turned back to the room. The battery alarm on the feeding pump blinked yellow, not urgent yet, but impatient. I silenced it and made a note on the clipboard, my handwriting smaller than usual. Outside, somewhere down the street, a car alarm started up and then cut off. The building felt hollow without its usual hum, like a refrigerator unplugged. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The ventilator's rhythm didn't change, but my awareness of it did. Every hitch felt louder, more intentional. I found myself watching Noah's throat, the track site, the slight movement of skin with each assisted breath. I had to stop myself from reaching out, from doing something just to break the stillness. Don't stimulate. I paced instead, heel to toe, careful not to make the floor creak. I checked the suction canister. I checked the IV bag level. I checked the battery indicators again, even though they hadn't budged much. At 1:34 a.m., the heart monitor blipped slightly faster. Not alarming, just a few beats per minute up, from low 40s to high 40s, still within a range I'd seen before, especially during routine care. But I wasn't doing routine care. I leaned closer, watching the monitor like it might confess something. Noah's eyelids fluttered. It was subtle, a tremor more than a movement, like a REM twitch. If I hadn't been staring, I would have missed it. My stomach tightened. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I stepped back, hands up, palms open, as if that mattered. The rule wasn't just about touching. It was about presence, about noise, about pulling someone toward the surface when they weren't meant to be there yet. His heart rate ticked up again. 51. No, I said softly. No. I checked the oxygen saturation. Still good. I checked the ventilator settings without touching them. Eyes only, everything nominal. Another flutter. This time the eyelids lifted a fraction. Not open, just not fully closed. The ventilator hitched. Late, corrected. My mind did the thing it always did when I was tired and afraid. It sprinted ahead. If he woke up, what did that mean? Panic. Fighting the ventilator. Self-extubation wasn't possible with a track, but agitation could cause all kinds of problems. Increased oxygen demand, desaturation, alarms, a cascade. And underneath that, a quieter thought. What if this is what they were afraid of? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I flinched hard enough that the IV pole rattled. I cursed under my breath and grabbed it. A text from Mara, in elevator. Power still out. Before I could respond, Noah made a sound. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even a vocalization, not really. More like a breath pushed against resistance. A faint rasp that came from deep in his chest and scraped its way out. The heart monitor jumped. 62. Okay, I said, louder now despite myself. Okay, Noah, I stopped. Talking. Stimulation. My mouth snapped shut. The room felt suddenly too small, the air thick. I forced myself to slow down, to do what the training said: assess, don't react. Noah's fingers curled. Not a reflex, not a spasm. They curled and then relaxed, like someone testing their hand after it's been asleep. My own hands started to shake. I thought of my nights at home, lying in bed, convinced I'd missed something catastrophic because I'd been too tired to notice it at the right moment. I thought of the way I'd taken this job to stay awake, to be useful, to be in control. Control was slipping through my fingers now, measured in heartbeats. The ventilator alarm changed tone again, still not critical, but closer. The battery indicator dipped to 89%. Still fine, still fine. Noah's eyelids lifted, this time unmistakably. They didn't open all the way, just enough for me to see the whites, the dark iris sliding beneath. His gaze didn't focus. It drifted, unfixed, like someone coming out of anesthesia. A whine built in my throat. Don't, I told myself. Don't. The rule said don't stimulate. The training said if a patient shows signs of distress, intervene. Which rule mattered more when the power was out and the doctor wasn't here, and the person in front of you was waking up when they weren't supposed to? My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. Noah's chest hitched, not the machine this time, but him. A breath fighting the ventilator's timing, pushing against it. The ventilator alarm went from yellow to orange. I moved before I decided to. I reached for the call button on the wall, hospital grade, tied into nothing now that the building's power was down, and then my hand hovered, useless. I grabbed my phone instead and called Mara. Straight to voicemail. Shit, I whispered. I looked at Noah, at his eyes fluttering, his fingers twitching again, more insistently this time. The heart monitor climbed into the 70s. If he fully woke up, this would get messy fast. If I sedated him, no, I didn't have orders. I didn't have meds. If I did nothing, the feeding pump alarm started up again, shrill now, battery low warning flashing. And from the hallway, faint but real, I heard a knock. Not at the door, on the wall, 3 quick taps followed by a muffled voice. Hello, a man called. Is someone in there? We're checking units, building security, or maintenance, or someone else entirely. Noah's eyes opened wider. The ventilator alarm escalated. The knock came again, louder, and I stood there, caught between rules and instincts, and a patient who was waking up at exactly the wrong moment, knowing that whatever I chose next would change the night in a way I couldn't undo. I held up a finger toward the door, a useless reflex, like the person knocking could see me through drywall. 1 second, I called, pitching my voice low and steady on purpose. The knock stopped. The muffled voice came back, closer to the door now. Building maintenance. We're checking units with medical equipment. Backup generators acting up. That explained the timing, the outage, the app silence. It also meant they might insist on coming in. Behind me, Noah made another sound, this one sharper. A short exhale that pushed past the ventilator's rhythm and threw it off completely. The alarm jumped to red for half a second, then settled back to orange, angry and impatient. I turned my body sideways, blocking the bed from the doorway as much as possible, and cracked the door just enough to see a sliver of the hall. A man in a navy jacket stood there with a flashlight angled down. Mid-30s, clipboard tucked under one arm. The light flicked up accidentally and caught my face. Sorry, he said. Didn't mean to blind you. We had a report of a power dip on this floor. We have a patient, I said, keeping my voice calm. Ventilator. Everything's stable. He nodded, eyes already drifting past me, trying to look into the room. Yeah, that's why I'm here. We need to make sure the outlet S on the emergency circuit. It is, I said, a beat too fast. We've checked. That wasn't entirely true. I knew the outlet was red, hospital standard, but I hadn't traced the line. My pulse thudded in my ears. The man hesitated. I still need to, behind me, something clattered. Not loud. Just the soft plastic on metal sound of the feeding pump line slipping against the stand as Noah's arm twitched again, stronger this time. The ventilator alarm spiked in response, shrill now, impossible to ignore. The maintenance guy's eyes snapped to the room. Is he okay? Yes, I said. He just needs quiet. The word quiet felt flimsy as soon as it left my mouth. Noah's chest began to fight the machine in earnest now. His breaths came shallow and fast, out of sync. The heart monitor climbed into the 80s. This was no longer a subtle change. Sir, the man said, firmer. If there's a problem, I need to see. I need you to give me 2 minutes, I said, and hated how close my voice was to cracking. 2 minutes, please. He looked at my face, really looked like he was weighing something. Liability, procedure, human instinct. 2, he said finally. Then I'm coming back. He stepped away, his shoes squeaking faintly on the hallway tile. I shut the door gently and locked it. My hands were slick with sweat now. I wiped them on my pants and turned fully back to Noah. Okay, I said under my breath. Okay, attempt 1. Fix the machine, not the man. I crouched by the ventilator, eyes scanning the screen. The waveform showed classic patient ventilator asynchrony, Noah initiating breaths that didn't match the set timing. The machine was compensating, but it wasn't winning. I reached for the control knob, then stopped myself. Dr. Lang's voice echoed in my head. You're not here to adjust settings. I didn't touch the settings. Instead, I adjusted the tubing, checked for kink, straightened a loop that had shifted when the power went out. I repositioned the humidifier bottle slightly, making sure condensation wasn't pooling. For a moment, just a moment, the alarm softened. Noah's breathing synced better. His heart rate dipped into the 70s. Relief washed through me so hard my knees went weak. Then his eyes focused. They landed on me, not sharp, not fully awake, but aware enough to track movement. A furrow appeared between his brows, confusion tightening his face. No, I whispered. No, no. He tried to lift his head. The ventilator alarm screamed. Attempt 1 failed. I backed away, hands up again, forcing myself to stop hovering. My presence was stimulation. My movement, my voice, my shadow, all of it could be pulling him further up. I turned away from the bed and faced the far wall, counting breaths. In, out. The city glow through the curtains pulsed faintly as another building across the street kicked on a generator. Behind me, Noah gasped. I spun back despite myself. His right hand was flexing, fingers clawing weakly at the sheet. His eyes were open now, wide and unfocused, panic blooming fast. He tried to speak. Nothing came out but a wet, broken sound around the track. Hey, I said, then bit the word off like it burned. Talking. Stimulation. But letting him panic felt worse. Attempt 2, call for help, even if it breaks the rules. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. Mara's sticky note flashed in my mind. Call me first, her voicemail. Dr. Lang's absence. The maintenance guy in the hall. Noah's oxygen saturation dipped 92, then 90. I hit call. The line rang once and died. No bars. The outage had knocked out something in the building's internal signal booster. My phone showed a useless gray, no service. I laughed, a short, ugly sound, then clamped my mouth shut. Attempt 2 failed. The ventilator battery indicator dropped to 84%. The feeding pump alarm wailed again, insistent, flashing red now. I moved to silence it and nearly tripped over the chair Mara had dragged in earlier. The edge caught my shin hard. Pain flared white hot and immediate. Shit, I hissed, hopping once before planting my foot and riding it out. My leg throbbed, pulse matching the alarms. Noah jerked at the sound. The maintenance knock came again, louder, closer to the door. "Sir, time's up. Don't open it," I told myself. "Don't open it." I hobbled to the door anyway, adrenaline carrying me. I cracked it just enough to speak. "He's waking up," I said, the truth tumbling out. "I need a doctor now." The man's face shifted instantly, all procedure gone. Is he supposed to wake up? No. That single word felt heavier than everything else I'd said tonight. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'm calling EMS." He raised his radio. Behind me, a loud bang echoed through the room. I whipped around, heart in my throat. Noah's arm had fallen from the bed rail. His hand had knocked the stainless steel tumbler off the dresser. It rolled across the floor, clanging, water sloshing out. Just that. Not a seizure. Not violence. Gravity and weak coordination. Misdirection. Explainable. But the sound pushed him further into panic. His chest heaved, breaths ragged, completely out of sync now. Ventilator alarm went continuous. The maintenance guy was already talking into his radio. "Unit 407, medical emergency. Ventilator patient waking, power outage." Noah's eyes locked onto mine again. This time, there was no mistaking it. He knew he was trapped in his body. He shook his head, a tiny, frantic motion, and mouthed something around the track. A word I couldn't hear. "Help." My leg throbbed. My arms felt like lead. The room smelled faintly of spilled water and warm plastic. I crossed back to the bed, rules shattering under the weight of reality. I took Noah's hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. Real, human. "I've got you," I said, breaking the rule completely now, not caring. "You're not alone." The ventilator alarm blared. The battery indicator ticked down another %. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, far too far. And as Noah squeezed my fingers, grounding himself in the only thing he could feel, I realized with sick clarity that whatever had kept him asleep this long was gone. And there was no putting him back now. The sirens got louder, then weirdly quieter, as if the sound had to fight the building's concrete before it could reach us. Noah's fingers were digging into my hand now. Not hard, he didn't have the strength, but desperate, like he was anchoring himself to the only thing that made sense. His eyes kept skittering from my face to the ventilator screen to the door. Orange alarm. Continuous. Battery, 81%. My shin pulsed with each heartbeat. I could feel warm sweat running down my ribs under my shirt. The room smelled like damp metal and warm plastic, and the faint medicinal sweetness of whatever had been running through the feeding line before it started screaming. In the doorway, the maintenance guy spoke into his radio again. "They're on their way. Elevators down, I think. Stairwells clear." "Okay," I said, and heard how thin my voice sounded. Noah jerked. The ventilator whined higher. I glanced at the track site. The ties were secure, but his hand was drifting upward, searching, the way panicked hands do. "Hey," I said, then swallowed the word. "Noah, listen." His gaze snapped to mine. He was fully awake now, in the brutal sense, aware enough to be terrified, not aware enough to understand why. He mouthed something again. I caught maybe one syllable. No. I couldn't tell if he meant no, don't touch me, or no, not again, or no, please. The maintenance guy shifted his weight. Do you have a backup bag? He asked. It took me a second to translate. Bag valve mask, manual ventilation. I looked at the equipment corner suction canister, tubing, gloves, spare track inner cannulas in sterile packaging. No obvious ambu bag. Then I remembered the bottom drawer that hadn't been fully closed, the blue pads. I dropped Noah's hand gently. His fingers tried to follow mine and then fell back onto the sheet, trembling. I'm going to grab something, I said, more to myself than him, and yanked the drawer open. Under the pads, a sealed clear plastic pouch with a hand pump inside, BVM, adult size, a simple oxygen mask tucked beside it. Relief hit, sharp and immediate, then dissolved when I realized what it meant. If I needed the bag, something had already failed. I pulled it out and set it on the bed within reach. The plastic crackled loud in the quiet, and Noah flinched, eyes going wide. Easy, I said. It's okay. It's okay. It was okay. It was just what I had. A knock harder this time came from the front of the unit, not the bedroom. The maintenance guy glanced back down the hall. They're here, he said. Fire key got them in. Footsteps. Multiple. Fast. The door opened, voices echoing in the living area controlled, practiced urgency. 2 people appeared in the bedroom doorway moments later, both wearing dark uniforms with reflective strips, headlamps clipped to their shoulders. One carried a hard case. The other had a folded stair chair strapped to their back. Janelle Ortiz, 32, female, moved first, eyes sweeping the room like a scanner. Ryan Feldman, 41, male, followed, already pulling gloves on. Who's the caregiver? Ortiz asked. I am, I said. Eli. He's waking up, and the ventilator battery. Ortiz was at the bedside in 2 steps, looking at Noah's face, then the track, then the ventilator. Okay. Hey, Noah, my name's Janelle, you're safe. Her voice was calm in a way that made my throat tight. Noah's eyes locked onto her, then darted back to me like he didn't trust calmness coming from a stranger. Feldman opened the hard case. Do we have paperwork? DNR? Vent settings? What's the diagnosis? I grabbed the folder off the dresser with shaking fingers and shoved it toward him. There. Vent settings meds. Rule says. I stopped myself from saying it. Do not stimulate. It sounded ridiculous now. Ortiz pointed at the ventilator display. He's fighting the rate. What sedation is he on? I hesitated. That was the part they hadn't told me. The meds list had names and times, but it didn't say why. No idea, I admitted. Mara, his caregiver, she said he isn't supposed to wake up. Feldman's eyebrows lifted. That's not a medical directive. From the hall, Mara's voice cut through, hoarse and too loud in her own panic. Eli, she appeared in the doorway, hair half fallen from its tight tie, cheeks flushed from running stairs. Her eyes went straight to Noah. This time she couldn't avoid his face because his eyes were open and begging. She froze. For a second, she looked like she'd been punched. Then she lunged forward. Noah, no, please. Ortiz stepped between her and the bed without being aggressive, just blocking line of sight like she'd done it 100 times. Ma'am, who are you? Mara Bennett, she said, breath hitching. This is her voice broke. I'm responsible, please. He can't be awake. Feldman held up the folder, flipping pages. Ma'am, is there a physician order, a DNR? A legal guardian document? Mara's eyes flicked to the sticky note in the folder, then away. Dr. Lang, he handles, Ortiz cut in, still calm. We need the why, we need the plan, because right now he's hypoxic and panicking. As if to prove her point, Noah's oxygen saturation dipped again. 88, 86. The alarm changed pitch. Feldman looked at Ortiz. We bag him, get better control. Noah shook his head weakly, eyes huge. His hand went toward the track ties again. I reacted without thinking, catching his wrist too firm, too fast. He jerked, terrified, and the movement tugged the tubing. The ventilator alarm screamed, red now. Hey, Ortiz snapped, not at Noah, at me. Gentle. Sorry, I said, and my voice cracked. I'm sorry. My shin flared with pain as I shifted weight. The room tilted slightly at the edges, not fainting, just adrenaline and exhaustion stacking up. Ortiz leaned in close to Noah's face. Noah, listen to me. You have a tube in your neck helping you breathe. I'm going to help you breathe another way for a minute. You need to let us. Noah stared at her like she was speaking through glass. Feldman disconnected the ventilator tubing at the track connector with quick, precise hands. The sudden silence was worse than any alarm, a hollow, vulnerable quiet. Ortiz took the bag valve device from the bed, snapped it onto the track adapter, and began ventilating manually. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Each breath was visible. Each breath was work. Noah's chest rose, then fell. His eyes fluttered, panic still there, but held at bay by the rhythm she gave him. The oxygen saturation crawled back up 87, 89, 91. A small lull, just enough for me to feel the tremor in my arms and realize my jaw was clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Feldman glanced at the ventilator. Battery's fine. The problem is he's asynchronous. He needs sedation, or he needs to be on a mode that supports spontaneous breaths better. We're not doing that here. Mara grabbed Feldman's sleeve. No sedation, she said, too sharp. He has brain, Ortiz didn't stop bagging. Ma'am, say it clearly. Mara's face crumpled. He had a fall, a brain injury. They kept him down so swelling wouldn't, she swallowed. If he gets agitated, his pressure can spike. It can kill him. Feldman looked at the folder again. Why is he at home on a vent if he's that unstable? Mara's eyes darted toward the window, toward the floor, anywhere but the question. It was what we could do. Hospital insurance. The words came out tangled, half-truths wrapped in real desperation. Ortiz said, okay, we're moving him. Now. No, Mara said, voice rising. Dr. Lang said. Feldman cut her off. Dr. Lang isn't here, we are. He's awake, fighting the vent, and you lost power. This is not safe. Noah made a wet cough against the bag, and suddenly there was a gurgling sound, secretions shifting, partial obstruction. Ortiz paused one beat, eyes narrowing. Suction, she said. My hands moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed the suction catheter, tore open the sterile pack with trembling fingers, connected it to the tubing. The canister gurgled when I tested it. Ortiz kept bagging with one hand and nodded for me to proceed. I'd done suctioning before, but never on someone whose eyes were open and watching me like I was about to drown them. Noah's gaze locked on my face. He mouthed no again, clearer now. I know, I whispered, breaking every rule. I know, I'm sorry. You need it. I inserted the catheter carefully. Resistance, then release. The suction pulled thick secretions grayish, streaked with something darker. Old blood from irritation, maybe. Or something worse. Noah gagged around the track, body bucking. Ortiz steadied the bagging rhythm, and Feldman put a firm hand on Noah's shoulder, not restraining, just grounding. The oxygen dipped 89, 87, then climbed back as the airway cleared. Noah's eyes squeezed shut, tears gathering at the corners. When I pulled the catheter out, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. That's the cost, my mind said stupidly, clinically. This is what it looks like when you keep someone alive against their panic. Ortiz handed the bag to Feldman and reached for the stair chair. We need to transfer him onto our portable ventilator in the hall. Elevator's out, so we're going downstairs. It's going to be rough. Mara's face went white. He can't, he can, Feldman said, and there was steel under the comm now. Or he dies here when that battery runs out, or he pulls his track out in panic. Noah opened his eyes again, exhausted now, fear dulled into a hollow, stunned look. He stared up at the ceiling, and his fingers found mine once more weak, involuntary. I squeezed back, throat burning. Outside the bedroom, the hallway was lit by flashlights and emergency exit signs. The building felt like a ship listing in the dark. Somewhere below, a door slammed. Somewhere farther away, another alarm chirped. Ortiz looked at me. Eli, you coming? I looked at Noah, at the folder, at Mara shaking, her carefully built routine collapsing. I nodded, because there was no version of this where I could step away and pretend I hadn't been the one in the room when he opened his eyes. Feldman started bagging again, squeeze, release, while Ortiz and the maintenance guy cleared a path. And as we moved Noah toward the doorway, into the dark hall, I realized the point we'd reached wasn't just medical. It was official. Strangers, paperwork, radios, questions that didn't have clean answers. Whatever had been happening in this condo at night, under amber light and rules written in bold, was now out in the open, carried down the stairs one manual breath at a time. They took Noah down the stairs in stages, pausing on each landing like mountaineers rationing air. I followed because no one told me not to, and because my hands still smelled faintly of saline and plastic, and I didn't trust myself to sit alone in the quiet. My shin ached in a dull, blooming way that promised to bruise the size of my palm by morning. Every step sent a small protest up my leg, but it kept me present. Count the steps. Watch the bag. Don't trip. By the time we reached the lobby, the power had come back on in patches. Ceiling lights flickered awake with a tired hum. Citrus cleaner smell returned, too bright after the night upstairs. Someone had propped the front doors open, and cold air rolled in, carrying traffic noise and the distant whine of sirens that weren't for us anymore. The paramedics transferred Noah onto their portable ventilator. It was quieter than the home unit, smoother in its timing, like it knew how to meet him halfway. His eyes were half closed now, lashes damp. When the straps clicked into place on the stretcher, he flinched, but didn't fight. Exhaustion had taken the edge off the panic. Mara hovered, hands fluttering uselessly at her sides. Her hoodie was inside out. She kept starting to speak and stopping, words stacking up behind her teeth. I should ride with him, she said finally. Ortiz nodded. You can. Mara turned to me then, like she just remembered I existed. Her face was blotchy, eyes red, but dry, someone who'd burned through tears earlier and had nothing left. I'm sorry, she said. Not for the rules, not for the half-truths. Just sorry, broad and heavy. I didn't know what to do with that, so I nodded. Feldman handed me a clipboard. We'll need a statement later. You did what you could. The words felt thin. What you could covered a lot of ground. Covered breaking rules. Covered holding a man down so he wouldn't pull a tube out of his own neck. Covered the moment I decided to talk when I wasn't supposed to. I watched the ambulance doors close. The red lights washed the lobby in a rhythm that made my eyes ache. Then the vehicle pulled away, and the building sighed back into its normal-shaped doors swinging shut. Someone muttering about the elevator, a dog barking somewhere above us. Normality rushed in like water through a crack. A police officer appeared, young, careful, notebook already out. Questions followed, measured and procedural. Names, times. When did the power go out? When did he wake up? Did anyone touch the ventilator settings? Had I administered medication? No, I said. No. Maintenance guy backed me up about the outage, the radio call. Dr. Lang's name came up. The officer wrote it down, pen scratching steadily. You'll probably hear from someone, he said, not unkindly. Hospital, maybe adult protective services. Standard, given the circumstances. Standard didn't mean harmless. It meant someone will look. When it was over, when the lobby returned to its late-night emptiness, and the officer left with a nod, I rode the elevator back up alone. The lights hummed. The mirror reflected a version of me that looked older than yesterday, eyes too bright, shoulders slumped in a way that felt permanent. The condo door was still ajar. Inside, the bedroom looked wrong without Noah. Too neat. The bed stripped and bare, rails folded down. The ventilator sat silent, unplugged, tubing coiled like shed skin. A dark stain marked the spot where the tumbler had spilled. Housekeeping would take care of it in the morning. I picked up the folder from the dresser and set it back where it had been, even though there was no one left to read it. The sticky note stared up at me. If anything changes, call me first. Not the agency. Everything had changed. My phone buzzed as if on cue. A voicemail notification from an unknown number. Then another. The first was from the agency. Neutral, professional. They'd heard there was an incident. They'd be in touch. The second was from Mara. Her voice was quieter now, the way people sound when they're trying not to fall apart in public spaces. They took him into ICU, she said. They're watching his pressures. He's sedated again. A pause. I should have told you everything. I didn't, because if I said it out loud, it would mean admitting how close we were cutting it. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said, "Thank you for staying." I sat on the edge of the empty bed and listened to the voicemail twice more before deleting it. I went home as the sky lightened to that early gray that pretends to be morning. My apartment smelled like dust and old coffee. I peeled off my clothes and stood in the shower until the hot water ran out, watching the water bead and slide down my shin, purple already blooming under the skin. Sleep came in pieces that day. Not the looping anxiety I'd had before. Something flatter. Images intruded anyway, the ventilator waveform, Noah's eyes locking onto mine, but they didn't spiral. They just sat there, heavy and real. 2 days later, a hospital social worker called. Polite questions, confirmation of details. Noah was stable, she said, still critical. There would be a review of his discharge plan. The words home care were used carefully, like they might crack if handled wrong. A week after that, the agency sent a letter, a form acknowledgement. No disciplinary action, pending further review. A reminder about scope of practice. A line about self-care resources. Dr. Lang never called. I kept working, but not nights. When I did sleep, I slept hard, like my body was making up for something. Sometimes I woke with the sense that I'd forgotten something important, but the feeling faded quicker now. The checking rituals loosened their grip. Once, standing in line at the pharmacy, I heard a ventilator alarm from a television in the waiting area. My muscles tensed before my brain caught up. It passed. Months later, I ran into Mara at a coffee shop near the hospital. She looked different, lighter somehow, despite the shadows under her eyes. We talked about nothing first: weather, bad coffee. She told me Noah had been moved to a long-term rehab facility. He had good days and bad days. He remembered waking up, she said. Not details, just the fear. He remembers you, she added, almost as an afterthought. Says there was someone who held his hand. I didn't know what to say to that either. So I said thank you, and meant for telling me he remembers, and for not making it into something else. Life resumed its familiar outline: bills, shifts, sleep. The world didn't end because one man woke up when he wasn't supposed to. But sometimes, late at night, I think about the rule written in bold, about how clean it looked on paper, about the way it failed the first time reality leaned on it too hard. And I wonder quietly, carefully, how many other nights are being held together by rules that only work as long as nothing changes. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you.